Does Mike Tomlin force players' skill set to fit his coaching style, or does he force his coaching style to fit his players' skill sets? We'll talk about that right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Joining me today is Josh Taylor of KDKA TV and 93.7 The Fan. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video. If you enjoy it, hit the subscribe button to our YouTube channel to get all of our daily content Monday through Friday, as well as our bonus episodes and our bonus questions that we do in our breaking news updates. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Join me today, as usual, on Thursdays is our man, Josh Taylor, from 93.7 The Fan, KDKA TV, all the places you can see him. Josh, what's up?
I'm just glad that you and I are actually talking and having a conversation and we can hear each other. Like, this is a progression for me from from a couple days ago when I lost my voice literally on the air. So the fact that you and I are talking and hearing each other is a big step forward. So I'm happy.
You powered through that like a champ, though, man. Because
I
heard you. I was like, man, that is struggle right there. That is real pain.
It was like you were talking to Cobra Commander, man. It was awful. I was about to call everybody Destro. It was ugly.
It was rough, but you made it through and you're back and you got your voice back. So we're happy to have you here. Now, Josh, I want to talk to you about some things that Mike Tomlin recently said at rookie camp last weekend that I think are some very interesting applications to how the Steelers view their team and view their players and how they approach them and how he's approached them. Now, there's always been the moniker that if you're a bad coach, you try to force players to fit your system instead of forcing your system to fit your players, because it is much easier to change up your play calls and your philosophies and your styles around your players' talents and their limitations than it is in reverse, because you're asking a player to completely remodel their body shape or whatever to do things that are outside of their skill set, whereas you as a coach can adapt yourself, and that's sort of what your job is as a coach, is to adapt and get these players to and get these players to be their best versions of themselves to work with the team. And this, what made me look at this a little bit closer, was some quotes that Nick Farabaugh, one of the reporters of Steelers. Now, also, I realized I haven't announced on this show. I've said it, I've tweeted it. I am no longer with DK Pittsburgh Sports. I am with Steelers Now, the Pittsburgh Sports Now franchise website. I am going to be their full-time major Steelers reporter. So I'm going to be, thank you, Josh. I'm going to be reporting from them. That's going to be that on top of this. I'm not giving this up. In fact, they're supporting it. They're putting this on their site. So if you want to see more of my content, it's not up there yet because I'm dealing with COVID and I want to get through this before I start, full-time with them. But that's where I will be. That's where you can read my work when I'm going to get back to writing, which should be soon, as soon as I kick these symptoms because they're kicking my butt. But point being, Steelers Now, go check them out. It's a great website. And Nick Farabaugh is one of the great people I've been working there with, along with Alan Saunders, Cale Berger, and a number of other people that are really talented in there. But Nick Farabaugh, as I said, tweeted this out, and he said, Mike Tomlin with an interesting answer when asked if DeMarvin Leal's frame has more room to put on some more weight. He said he's speculating if he thinks that we want him to put on weight. We're just here to get him to know him, his body, and how it works. And of course, that was also said after DeMarvin Leal revealed, hey, I'm up to 300 pounds now for rookie camp. So the question there, and this has been a question that I've been asking since the Steelers drafted him, will he play more inside or outside? And when I saw that DeMarvin Leal said, oh, I'm up to 300 pounds, I'm like, well, that's inside weight. You put on that kind of weight to get on the inside, bulk up, get stronger, and push people around. But you hear what Mike Tomlin says, and he's like, man, like, I don't know what he thinks. That sounds to me like, I don't know what you thought you was going to be doing, but we're going to determine that, not you. And I think that's kind of an interesting statement there, because that tells me that they don't want him to predetermine what he's going to have to do. They want to say, hey, let's figure out what your body does, and then we'll put you in the best situation to be with those skills.
Yeah, that's the first thing that stuck out with me, because when they drafted him, my first thought was, okay, well, he's not really the 5 technique, 3-4 defensive end that you would expect.
Right.
Granted, yes, he's 6'4", 290 pounds, but when you look at his tape, when you look at some of the work that he's done, and even look at his numbers, he performed more like an even front outside rusher.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty much how he was looked at and evaluated while he was at Texas A&M, won an award for the best, defensive end in the country. So just one of those things where you look at it and you say, well, are we looking at him with the wrong lens, or can he do more than one thing? If you're looking at him with the wrong lens, all you got to do is change your perspective. But if he could do more than one thing, now you're talking about a guy who has a lot more flexibility. And this is one of those things where, we kind of make a joke about it, especially if you're in the facility a lot. You hear people say, "Oh, the more you can do," because we know they like to use that term, "the more you can do," talking about players and what their skill sets are and how flexible they can be. So it felt like to me, maybe DeMarvin Leal was either a guy who had one particular thing that he did really well, or he could be the more you can do guy. And if he's the more you can do guy, then it gives him some flexibility. But just like you, I was taken aback, and I'm saying, well, if he's putting on weight, what do they really expect him to do?
Mm-hmm.
Then it hit me. Wait a minute. They're not expecting him to do anything. They're trying to figure out what he is before they can expect what he can do. Because this is the interesting part. We're talking about different roles and different spots on the line that guys can play. DeMarvin Leal probably, if you're going by what he did at Texas A&M, he probably fits a certain part of depth on that depth chart defensively. If you're talking about the sub package, maybe he becomes a sub package edge rusher in that larger mold that they could still use. Yes, you have TJ Watt. Yes, you have guys on either side that could do something. Of course, you have a guy opposite TJ Watt that can do that job as well. And that's all well and good. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you have depth behind your starting two edge guys that you can use in sub package, now you're not shuffling the same two or three guys. Now you can have in two different groups of outside guys that can come in, or you can sub out your inside guys. Now you have a defensive line group that is both healthy, first of all, which is really important because they weren't last year, and B, versatile, because now you can bring in whole units of guys if you want to. You can have your A unit, you can have your B unit. You could be like the Giants 10 years ago and have that NASCAR front with just all defensive ends that were just all speed guys. Not that I'm expecting them to do that. However, you have that room now of flexibility as far as personnel is concerned. So I was just as curious as they are trying to find out what DeMarvin Leal is, because if he does become a guy that can do more than one thing, that only helps them as far as depth on the defensive line.
And here's the thing. We're not talking out of our rear ends here. This is something the Steelers do. And we want to talk about how that's worked not even too long ago. We're not talking about the 70s. We're not talking about the 90s. We're not even talking about Bill Cowher. We're talking about Mike Tomlin right here in the past several years, when you look back at how the Pittsburgh Steelers have operated and letting guys fit into the roles that they'll be better at on the roster to maximize their efforts. We'll talk about that in just a second and further what we're talking about here. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Built Bar, and not just Built Bar, the amazing birthday cake Built Puffs. If you don't know what the Puffs are, they're the first ever protein-infused marshmallows. They're amazing, they're light, and the new birthday cake flavors come with only 150 calories but pack 16 grams of protein. And if you taste them, I talk about it a lot. They sent me a whole pack, and I have been just plowing through them one a day, and I do them as my snack in the middle of the day when I'm in between lunch and dinner, something that gets me through whenever I'm low on energy, and they taste amazing. They're like if you took your finger and put them in the ice the cake frosting batter and you put it in and you lick it, and you're like, oh man, that tastes amazing. But then after about 2 or 3 of those, you're like, I just put way too much sugar inside of me. These birthday cake Built Puffs are gonna taste just like that, without overpowering you with anything like that. Again, they're only 150 calories. They bring 16 grams of protein and only 9 grams of sugar. This is an awesome flavor. It's limited time and available at built.com. So go to built.com right now. You'll find all Built Puffs and Built Bars, which are all covered in 100% real chocolate. They can range from 130 to 150 calories, but keep you down in sugar, keep you down in your calories, and help you stay fit and plan with anyone's diet. So go to built.com right now and use the promo code LOCK15. That's LOCKED 15 LOCK15. You'll get 15% off your next order when you get your next order of Built Bars or Built Puffs at built.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm Chris Carter. He's Josh Taylor, and we're talking about Steelers coaching philosophies and fitting them to their players, and seeing how certain players are going to be fitting into what the Steelers want to do, offense or defense. I want to keep looking at DeMarvin Leal. But to do that, I think it's important to look at the last two major defensive linemen the Steelers drafted and have become starters in Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt. Both of these guys come in, they're huge. They're long frames, big frames, sturdy frames, guys that look like could be pass rushers, but they also could look like they could be run stuffers. And these are guys who have lined up all along the Steelers defensive line over the years. If you thought they were just going to be DTs, well, they've been in the 5 tech. They've even come out and helped on the edge on certain sub packages. But they're guys that they have moved all over the place. And even Stephon Tuitt over the years, as I've talked about on the show, this is a guy who's gained weight and lost weight in years when he had to figure out what was going to be his strength, what was going to be his skill set. And referencing Mike Tomlin's quote that we talked about in the last segment, this is obviously a thing. They want to see what DeMarvin Leal can do. What can his body take? What can it endure? And what are the things that will allow him to best beat the offensive line in front of him to say, hey, should he be more on the edge? Should he be in the 5 technique? Should he be in the 0 technique? He probably wouldn't be that because there's very few people that can pull that off. But where should he line up? And Josh, I think that if there's anything that we've seen from the Steelers, they're good at doing this, especially with defensive linemen.
And the thing that should be noted is that not only are they good at doing it with their defensive linemen, the guy who's become the best of that group is on his way to building a really, really good career. We're talking nearly Hall of Fame career in Cam Hayward. He has become I hate to use the term poster child, but he really has become that. He is the prime example of them using a guy's skill set and building around it. And he has since become an anchor of the team. And he's also their captain on that side of the ball. Now, granted, those two things aren't related, but it does stand to reason that, like you said, they've really developed a method for doing this well over the years. And especially considering the fact that if you think about the time when Mike Tomlin first got here, 2007, this team really, for the most part, played a lot of that base 3-4, which means they're outside, those two defensive ends on the outside, those 2-5 techniques pretty much had one job for the most part. Then when they went to the nickel, they may have had a second job as far as dropping inside to play the 2 inside spots on that nickel or dime formation. It didn't happen as often, but it was a possibility. But now things are a lot different. You see teams going with 3. If you're Buffalo, 4 wide receiver sets. So having that base group out there is not going to help you. Your base either becomes your nickel or it becomes, in some cases, maybe even a big version of your dime, but you're trying to find a way to, adapt to what other offenses are trying to do to neutralize what you can do on defense. And you have to be able to adjust likewise. Offenses are so versatile now. You got tight ends that can do 2 or 3 different things. They can split wide. They can play in the slot. They can play in line. They can block. They can catch. They can beat DBs downfield. Some of them can do that. So now, since you have so many different players that can do different things on offense, on defense, you have to start thinking the same way. You got to start having defensive linemen that can play more than one spot. You might have to have corners that can play inside and outside. You might have to have safeties that, if they're fast enough, maybe they can play a slot position that can maybe make a nickel defense seem a little bit more like a base because that safety is fast enough to play a slot receiver. You can get away with that schematically. Now it becomes more incumbent on defenses to be versatile and have the ability to mix and match like offenses tend to do, or you're going to get smashed with certain personnel groupings. How many times in years past did we see New England not only torture the Steelers, but other teams by doing something simple, by having 2 receivers, 2 tight ends, and a running back? One play, they'll come out with a 2 tight end set, 21 personnel or 12 personnel. One set, they'll come out with a guy lined up wide in the slot, and one next snap, they'll come out with 4 guys split wide or 5 split wide, and they might run the play through same play 3 or 4 different times out of 3 or 4 different looks, and you're wondering what you just saw. That's what becomes so important for defenses to be able to adjust now, or have the personnel that can help them adjust with what they see or what they might face. And this is really just a microcosm of it. The Steelers in their defensive line is really just a small example of how teams now have to be a little bit more diverse, a little bit more flexible, and a little bit more versatile in how they combat what other teams are doing on the other side of the ball.
And I agree entirely, because this is just one position we're talking about, right?
Right.
Maybe 2 if you can count interior defensive line to the edge defenders. But you need guys who can play the safety and play the slot position. You need inside linebackers who can line up outside and feel comfortable covering different spaces. You need people to be able to take on different roles and various roles to cover certain positions. And this is where I think that this starts to be interesting. And this is why I said all along, I'm not so sure that DeMarvin Leal means anything about Stephon Tuitt's status, because I'm not guaranteeing that he's going to do what Stephon Tuitt did and maybe still will do for the Pittsburgh Steelers over the next few years. I think that maybe he eventually gets to that kind of role if he learns that. But right now, there's too many different things that he could be. And Mike Tomlin's quote kind of indicates that to me as well when looking at his potential and expanding that even beyond other positions and other situations. I look at if we look at the offense, there's other positions as well where you look at like the wide receiver position, and you look at Calvin Austin III. Some people feel with him being a guy who's smaller, he's in the 5'8", 5'9" range, and he's a guy that some people say, oh man, he couldn't fit what the Steelers do. And Josh Roundtree of the 90.7 The Fan brought up an interesting point. He's like, hey, I know a lot of people just look at Tyreek Hill and think, oh yeah, this is going to work. But most guys that size don't work that well. And these guys are similar in height. But at the same time, you have to wonder, what did the Steelers see in him? Is that something that they can beat? And Nick Faribault, again, in his questions to Mike Tomlin, he said Mike Tomlin, when asked about Calvin Austin's body size and his type, and what that allowed to Steelers to not worry about drafting him, and he said Mike Tomlin said one word: speed. And to me, this further emphasizes the idea that his size may be a problem, but that speed, that 4.32 40-yard dash time that we saw there, that's the thing that they think is going to negate that. I also think they might have answers for how he could contribute in several different parts of the offense.
I keep coming back to the same thing as far as not just Calvin Austin III. I'll make the same case with George Pickens. This wide receiver group got much, much faster.
Yeah.
Because you're adding Calvin Austin III, 4.3 speed. You can't really argue with it. But when George Pickens is running a 4.4, that's more speed you're adding to it. When you lose a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, when you lose a guy like James Washington, now you're bringing in receivers that are notably faster than the two guys you lost. That signals a big shift in mindset and mentality and what they're trying to do schematically for me, because they're not just trying to take advantage of one or two guys. They're trying to make it harder for an entire defense to figure out, hey, who do we need to stop? Who do we need to deal with? And how does this guy become more and more difficult? And you're right, Calvin Austin III, his speed becomes more complicated, but it also becomes a situation where excuse me. It also becomes a situation where we talked about this before. If you can get Calvin Austin III in the slot and Matt Canada's offense and using jet motion to figure out what they're going to do, which not only involved in just handing off on jet sweeps, but play action on jet sweeps. Maybe there's screens coming out of there if it's read properly. There's a whole different list of things you can do, a whole lot of combinations how you can make this work with just one guy being put in one spot. That's not counting where you can move him around. And the thing I like the most about Calvin Austin III, he played outside at Memphis.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a short guy that played in the slot and that's all he did. It's not like he's Julian Edelman or something like that, where he's moving around.
Yeah.
He's playing outside. He's making moves and beating defensive backs outside. He's beating them down the field on the outside. Now he's played inside and made plays there too. But I think when you have a guy that has that play outside mentality, you bring him inside and you can move him around. That makes him a lot more dangerous, because there's a guy I thought about. Now, granted, they're not necessarily the same, but they strike me in similar concepts when they came out of college, got to the NFL, and how they've been used. Tyler Lockett is a guy that I loved coming out of Kansas State. Absolutely loved him. I was like, man, this guy could make a fantastic Steeler. Mm-hmm. And the Seahawks snatched him before the Steelers could earlier in that round.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see how Tyler Lockett has grown and how his skill set has become more and more utilized by the Seahawks. He wasn't just a slot guy that makes plays in the slot. He can make plays downfield. He can make plays in short yardage. He can be a possession guy. They can move him around and do different things. So when you look at a guy like Calvin Austin III and you see that speed, your mind should start like just wheeling and start making a whole bunch of clicking noises like mine does, because I'm sitting there going, okay, now that they know the versatility that he has and the toughness that he has and the mindset that he has, they can do a lot of different things with him. And that's what makes him, not just him, but him being a function of this defense, a lot more dangerous.
I agree.
I should say.
No. I feel exactly what you're saying, and I want to clarify. Josh Roundtree is not saying that Calvin Austin's going to be bad. In fact, he says he even says he's a dynamic playmaker. He's just he looks at the history of guys who were 5'7", 5'8" in that range, and is like, there's not a lot of there's not a high success rate of guys of that size. But again, the Steelers are looking at his speed and his ability to make plays with that speed, because it's one thing to be straight line speed. Dre Archer, straight line speed. That guy was just pure speed, but you couldn't find a way to utilize it in the NFL.
Never scored a touchdown.
Which is to the point. He didn't even succeed elsewhere. That's the crazy part about this. But Calvin Austin isn't just speed. He's quick twitch. He's sharp. He's smart with his moves. He can create routes or branch off routes in the middle of them and get separation either early in his routes or late in his routes. He's found different ways to beat you. And when you have that kind of speed and that kind of quick twitch movement, that ability to do that, and body control to be able to get away from defenders, that's what makes you dangerous on any part of the field. And sure, are there going to be times when he probably gets pressed by a bigger cornerback and it becomes a problem? Sure, because Antonio Brown, there were games with Richard Sherman was very physical with him in one time that they faced. I think it was 2013, and it was a rough go for Antonio Brown. Might have been later, might have been 2015 or 4. But point being, there was one time where Richard Sherman had a size advantage and was able to use that against Antonio Brown. And I'm not saying Calvin Austin is going to be Antonio Brown, but there were so many different times that Antonio Brown did not have a size advantage and beat you because he was so quick out of his release, because he was so great in setting up his routes and setting up his body to beat you in different situations. That's why I think Calvin Austin can be there. But I want to talk more about how, again, the coaching applies to how this is going to be used. We'll talk about that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, going to talk to you guys about betonline.net. Y'all know about betonline.net. It's the number one place that you need to go for all your betting stats and sports information. You can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NBA playoffs. We're in the conference finals now, baby. The Heat took game one. That's going to be my team. They're going to be doing what they're going to be doing. We're going to see. By the time you're watching this, you've already seen what's happened between the Mavs and the Warriors. Either way, it's exciting. Get all your information at betonline.net. But you also have the Stanley Cup playoffs going along and Major League Baseball well into the season, as it is mid-May. So it is awesome. BetOnline.net is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action at BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's Josh Taylor, and we are here continuing to talk about coaching and how it applies to fitting the different skill sets of players. And we can have this conversation several times over about Kenny Pickett and George Pickens, but I was bringing in Calvin Austin, DeMarvin Leal, because their body types, I think, are interesting here. Because you look at George Pickens, everyone's like, oh, yeah, he can be a wide receiver one if he wants to be in the NFL. You look at Kenny Pickett, and he's like, oh, yeah, that guy could be a starting quarterback in the NFL. But Calvin Austin, smaller, faster, quicker. There are guys like him, but not many that become star receivers. And Tyreek Hill, of course, the shining example of that, who I believe Tyreek Hill is, very close to the size. I believe he's within an inch, maybe half an inch around there as far as size goes. But when looking at their skill sets, and him with DeMarvin Leal and how he can be a tweener between an edge guy and an inside guy, it's all about finding where these guys fit. And you and I talked about this with Matt Canada, with how Calvin Austin can fit various roles. This is why I think he's an interesting pick, because he's not just going to be asked to be the guy that we talked about, the jet sweep guy that's going to come around the edge and make you think, oh, they're going to hand it off to him. Oh, is he just going to be a gadget play guy? He is a guy that you can line up out wide, and then you can make that motion person George Pickens, Deontay Johnson. You can make it Chase Claypool. This is why I think I'm really excited to see what Matt Canada actually does with the offense this year, because those limitations that we looked at last year, those are out of the way. This is his chance to be creative. If he's not creative, then he needs to go. But this is the time for him to prove that. And Calvin Austin is a piece who I think is versatile enough to allow him to do a lot of those same things he wants to do with him, with some of these other ball players they have.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued in how they're just going to use not just the receivers, but even some of their other skill guys. How would they use Najee Harris? How would they deploy him? How will they deploy Connor Hayward, depending on the down and distance and personnel? This is why his acquisition is a curious one, because You and I have talked about the George Aston role. Can block, can maybe catch a pass or two, can run the football, can do a lot of different things. Where does Connor Hayward fall as far as that particular personnel grouping? What are they going to do with Pat Freiermuth? Is he going to be on the line, or going to split him wide? They're going to do some different things with him. How will they move these guys around? Will you see Freiermuth in more of a wing position where he's off the line and kind of in that wing formation, trying to do some different things there as far as maybe running the split zone or some play action off of that, or maybe some variation of split zone play action with a jet sweep? You never really know with this offense who's going to be doing what. And that's what forces defenses to slow down and try to process, where the ball is. And you almost have to pick your poison. Which guy am I going to worry about, and which one am I going to let maybe roam free and potentially kill me? This is a lot of that. This is a lot of the essence of why that offense is what it is. And they're not the only team doing this. I don't know how many times I have to mention this to people. They're not the only team running an offense like this. It's all over the league. San Francisco's doing it. Green Bay's doing variations of it. Kansas City was probably the first one to do variations of it. And they've been doing it for about 5 years now, which ironically was right after they saw Matt Canada do it at Pitt. That's not a coincidence. So when you're trying to add up just exactly where a Calvin Austin III fits, where a George Pickens fits, and where Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool fit, this is where it becomes, hey, we want to get this guy the ball. We can use this guy as a decoy. Or we want to get the ball here to this guy. We can use this guy as a decoy. Or more importantly, hey, we just want to find some space to run the ball with Najee Harris. So let's use this guy as a decoy and put everybody's focus on the outside. Now you have different options. Now you have different things you can do. And you're using each of the guys you have for their specific skill sets, which I believe is a mentality that Mike Tomlin has adopted during his time here in Pittsburgh, that you're looking at skill sets now and how these guys can make your offense work, as opposed to having guys that don't necessarily fit what you're trying to do, doing things that may not work the way you want them to.
Right. And there's times where you're forced into that situation,
right.
Like when they had to put Ray McLeod out there also, in the later part of last season. That was because they had so many injuries at different points. When Darius Hayward-Bay would have to go out there and play significant minutes for the Steelers, Kobe Hamilton, those years.
Kobe Hamilton, yes.
There's been those times where it's just, hey, this is who we got this week. We're hurt up. It's part of the NFL. Go and make it work. And we're not talking about that. We're talking about finding different ways to fit different guys. I mean, Le'Veon Bell was a perfect example. Najee Harris, you're talking about how different ways he might get used. I look at this as I'm intrigued to see, how does Matt Canada, Mike Tomlin, and the coaching staff work Najee Harris into this plan as well, because Le'Veon Bell didn't just run the ball for the Steelers when he opened up the offense. In 2014, when he was a second-year player, he became Ben's release valve. Whenever the play that Ben Roethlisberger didn't like, or whenever the play was out there and what he thought would be there wasn't there, he would dump it down, get it to Bell, and Bell would get 5, 6, 10, 8 yards, 12, and sometimes he'd get a first down and create a big play by himself. That ignited the offense in 2014 and changed how the Steelers worked for some time when he was there. And I think Najee Harris was partially that, but Najee Harris said, I can run routes. I can do all these different things. So a lot of this, it's not just about Calvin Austin, the receivers. It's about finding all the different ways that these pieces are going to be here. And this is why, again, I'm saying this Steelers offense could be a lot more dynamic than people are giving it credit for. When we're looking at the young playmakers that are on this roster, the talent that is there, these aren't nameless receivers we're talking about. Chase Claypool put up a double-digit touchdown season his rookie year. Yes, he was off last year, but he's still a threat. Deontay Johnson has serious separation skills that we saw in the first half, or I'd say half, maybe even 60% of last season, where he was putting in numbers that made him a dangerous wide receiver. The sky is the limit for a George Pickens type of guy. And Calvin Austin looks very dangerous. That's not even mentioning how Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris had very strong rookie years. You're putting all that with new quarterbacks. That's what I'm talking about with the potential here. And this is where it comes back to what the situation with DeMarvin Leal. Over these next few weeks, and OTAs, I believe, starts this next Tuesday, you're going to start to see the Steelers get their first hands on these guys to figure out, hey, this is what we want to do with all of our talents right here. These are the plays we're going to try to run. And these are the ways we're going to try and create disadvantages for the defense to have to think way more about what we're calling an offense than we did before.
And this is why, when you add all that stuff up and try to make sense of all of it, This is why Pitt's offense in 2016 was scoring 40 points a game. It's why they were able to score 42 points on Penn State and beat them. It was why they were able to go to Death Valley and score 40-plus points on Clemson and beat them. All these things all fit together. All these pieces matter. If I'm going to, use a laissez-faire quote from The Wire, because I like to quote The Wire. But all the pieces do matter. It really does all fit together in terms of how defenses now have to play you, because they now have to worry about what everybody on the field is doing. They can't just say, we're just going to double team this receiver and take him out. No. You got to wonder, hey, are they going to use this receiver to get this guy open? Are they going to bring this guy in motion to open up the other side of the field? So many different things are now worrying at the same time. And now a player on the field who may have one assignment, he may not be able to just worry about. Let's say an outside linebacker in a 4-3, his assignment's the tight end. Well, against Matt Canada's offense, his assignment may no longer be the tight end, because they may send a receiver in jet motion that now goes into his gap, and now he has to worry about where that receiver's going if a run play happens. Everything changes because they're moving guys around, and now different defenders' responsibilities or their particular role, it might change at the drop of a hat, because the offense is now giving them new wrinkles that they have to pay attention to, which kind of brings things over to the quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, and this is kind of a semi-serious way of putting it, but I've said this before. I said this the very day Pitt faced Clemson, actually. Mm-hmm. There were times with Pitt's offense under Matt Canada, I felt like the guy who had the easiest job was Nathan Peterman, because his job was just find out where the ball goes, get that guy the ball, and get the hell out of the way. You don't have to do anything else. Get him the ball and move. And I made the analogy of Matt Canada being Will Smith and Nathan Peterman being Kevin James and Hitch. He's just like, look, 90 degrees, elbows, side to side. You don't have to do anything crazy. You don't need no pizza. They got food there. You don't have to go nuts. Just get the ball to the right guy, and your job is done. It almost, in some ways, in some instances, seems like the quarterback's job is the easiest one. It's just get the ball to the right guy and don't mess it up, because there's so many other pieces moving at the same time. And you don't have to take the Q-tip and throw it away. You don't have to go there. You don't have to do all that.
I love because Hitch. That was a great reference.
It was a great movie. It was a great soundtrack too, which is ridiculously underrated.
Yeah, I agree.
There's so many things happening all at the same time that the defense can't just focus on, okay, are they running? Or are they passing? Is it play action? You got to account for a bunch of different things happening all at the same time. And this offense is designed to do just that. We always hear coaches talking about playing fast, especially defensive coaches. They want guys playing fast. What's a good way to keep a guy from playing fast? Make him think.
There you
make
go.
him think. You slow him down, and he can't react the way he thinks he should react on something, because now he has to anticipate, wait, he's not doing what I thought he was going to do because someone else is now in this area and making things complicated. All those things matter now. And when you have guys with skill sets that make the execution of those things easier and more effective, it makes it so much harder for the defense to figure it out.
It does. And this is something that I've said a lot of times. It's funny. You're always in different modes when you get to the off season, but this is one of my favorite things that I talk about in week to week matchups is make them think, because the more time they're spending hesitating, the less time they're spending executing their plan, and the more time you have to set the tone, to set to set the tones of engagement, because you're sitting here and if, for example, if it starts from the very everything they always say starts at the line of scrimmage. It starts with the offensive line and the defensive line, and who wins that more often than not. If a defensive lineman is thinking, wait a minute, could they be going this way or that way? Because I don't recognize this alignment. And you get the advantage of the snapped ball, and you get the first step as an offensive lineman, and your hands on the inside of your man. That can set the entire tone for the entire play, and then everyone feeds off of your win, and that leads to more wins in the play for your players. This is what we're talking about, and that's not just the line; it's the linebackers, the cornerbacks, the safeties, the quarterbacks. I mean, it can happen in every position. The defense can do the same thing in reverse. If the quarterback's unsure of where to go with the ball, and then miss their opportunity, and then all their receivers are in positions that are covered, or just the places that you're not going to feel good about throwing the ball. It gives the defense more time to get after the quarterback. These are the type of things that we think the Steelers are trying to do, and why I think we this is not saying that they'll definitely be this team and they'll definitely run the division and run the NFL, but these are things that I think that can really put them in a position to be a stronger team than people are giving them credit for. We just talked about in yesterday's episode about how ESPN ranks them 26th in the NFL in their football power index. Okay, maybe that's because you don't believe in the quarterbacks and you don't know about a lot of the rookies that they have. They do have a lot of young players in their roster, but I think there's the talent and the coaching staff on this team to make something out of them and mold them into something that's going to be a collective powerhouse. It's going to fit their skill sets very well. We're over our time. We have to call it quits here. But Josh, thanks so much for joining us here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. It's always great to have you here. You give great insight into everything you do. Let people know they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
Josh Taylor HD. That is the simplest way to find me anywhere. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. More often than not, Twitter is usually the most inclusive to find me there, but that's the best place to go. As far as the work, TV side, CBS Pittsburgh, you can find it online, of course, Channel 2 if you're in Pittsburgh. Also on the radio side of things, 93.7 The Fan. Best place to look is the Odyssey app. Download it. You can find it there. You can also listen to the Locked On Steelers podcast there as well. So do a little 2-for-1. I'll be back there this upcoming Sunday at 4 o'clock. I'm hoping to find a way to slide Chris in there during that 2 hours. And we'll be able to both talk with our voices, and he won't, think that Cobra Commander's yelling at him, which will be a good thing. So hopefully we're hoping to make that happen on Sunday as well. But yeah, that's where you find me.
That's absolutely great. Do check out Josh. He is awesome, and I'm excited to be on radio with him this Sunday. But thanks again, Josh. Thank you, dear listeners, for watching and viewing this episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Remember, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, or YouTube. If you watch this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get to all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus episodes. And we can sometimes do our breaking news updates from there as well. If you want to help out the show, give us a 5-star review with a positive comment on Apple Podcasts. Do both at the same time, and we'll get you a shout at the end of the show. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Thanks again for checking us out. We'll be back tomorrow with Jenna Harner of Channel 11, finishing out the week and starting to set the tone for us to get to look at OTAs next week when those start up. Again, I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Be back on your screens and in your ears very soon.